I call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Would you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I want to welcome everyone who's here and everyone who's watching us at home. Briefly, I'll go over our agenda for this evening. We will have the consent agenda, which will consist of the minutes from the February 25th meeting. And then we're going to have a little bit different. We're going to have a presentation kickoff for the Comprehensive UDC Plan Update Steering Committee. And that's about it for our agenda this evening. So that being said, I'll move to the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved, and we move on to the comprehensive plan update. And Mr. Allen, our presenters are not here yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Yes, we are awaiting the classic stuck in traffic. Folks from the consultant team, they're driving separately. There'll be two of them coming. Chris Brewster from Gould Evans, he's the project manager, and Dave Knopick is one of the sub-consultants who will be handling most of the public engagement events, kind of organizing the steering committee, some of the subcommittees, and then kind of the public presentations and open houses and such. He'll be kind of the point person for that. So we expect to hear from the members, see them here shortly, but in the meantime, appreciate everyone's attendance here tonight. I think we're just missing one planning commissioner for this evening and one councilman who's on the steering committee. So I do want to note, it shows up there, have introductions, project overview, and project team. I'll jump to project team just real quick. Kind of walk through who those folks are. Again, I noted who are the consultant team. The leads on those at this point are staff. Again, just listing all of our planning division within the community development department staff. The second page has all the consultants listed. Let me pull it up on the screen as well. So these are the consultants you can see here. Again, Gould Evans, Chris Brewster, his associate is Graham Smith, and then they also have Robert Whitman, who's a landscape architect, does a lot of the design work. So some of the layouts and such that you'll see with all the documents comes from his office. D Planet, that's Dave Knopick doing the public engagement, as I noted. He's listed here again, lead facilitator. The transportation components of the comprehensive plan, and then also with the UDC, Wilson and Company, Vanessa Spartan and Jim Townsend are the folks with that group. Again, they will not be here tonight, but they'll be engaged with some of the larger meetings, design charrette and public open houses and such. You'll see them at times. Olson Associates, I think folks are familiar with Kevin Klinkenberg, who did the downtown master plan a number of years ago, along with Ryan Dugdale. The two of them, you'll see them off and on as well as the folks from Wilson and Company. But Kevin will be engaged, again, with that design charrette part of things as well. The steering committee, the information that was provided, you can see here. Insert final roster. That's simply because we were, again, confirming everybody's attendance and membership, so I appreciate everybody responding back. I do want to note the folks from the Planning Commission who will be officially serving on the steering committee kind of broke it down at Chairman Billup's recommendation by council district, which is how the membership from the city council is engaged with the steering committee as well. And so Chairman Billups will be on there, and then three others, again representing districts 1, 2, and 3. Commissioner Bartolotta from District 1, Commissioner Wallace from District 2 and Commissioner Culpepper from District 3 will be the three, in addition to Chairman Billups. And then we also appreciate, again, folks being available as alternates should they be unable to attend a meeting or, again, just to kind of tag team and keep some continuity there. District 1, Commissioner Duhan, is that correct? District 1, thank you. Now I got lost. I don't have it in front of me. Commissioner Graham from District 3. And
now I'm drawing a blank, too. Commissioner McCall.
yes, thank you. Thank you. Surprise. District 2. So just kind of team up with each other as well, just to make sure, as meetings come around, we're planning to have the meetings once per month before the regular scheduled planning commission meeting. So it wouldn't necessarily be operating like this. It'd be more informal, wouldn't be broadcast on Channel 7 or online. It'll just be more of an informal meeting. It's a formal meeting, it's a public meeting, but informal in terms of not at the dais. We'll have tables down here for the 7 members, 4 planning commissioners, 3 councilmen. And again, I neglected to mention our councilman here, Councilman Carter from District 1, Councilman Edmondson from District 2, and then Councilman Fowler from District 3. So appreciate you being a part of this project as well. And again, we hope to stick with everybody through the entire project. So this isn't just a temporary thing for the next month or two. It's hopefully through the whole year, which is why, again, we don't want to overwhelm people with too many meetings. That's why we're trying to team it up with a planning commission meeting. Typically the first planning commission meeting, like we're having here, again, the second Monday. We're hoping that would be the next steering committee meeting would be April 8th. And it would be at 5:30. It'll be, again, before the planning commission meeting. So hopefully it's not too much, extension of your Monday evening, but again, we can provide some snacks and such as well to get people through kind of over the early part of the dinner hour, and again, keep it condensed to just that 1 hour, or actually less than an hour, and then move right into the planning commission meeting. So everyone's welcome to attend all of those or any of those. Just again, the steering committee is going to be composed of those folks I just noted. And again, we'll finalize this roster. We do have a couple of questions that we can kind of go through as we go with this. I'll kind of defer to the consultants a little bit with that, but they've always provided, for example, a binder to put paper in. We're trying to be a little bit more electronic in nature, so that's something to think about, is whether you'd like a binder with paper to come to you every month, or if you'd rather just keep everything kind of electronically and keep it yourselves, either in a folder and then have it in your iPad, or if you actually do want a physical binder. So something to think about. If you have an answer tonight, that's fine. Just kind of let us know after the meeting, and we'll make a note as to who would prefer the paper over the electronic, or if you'd like both, that's certainly possible, but we're trying to limit as much paper as we can through the process. The other thing too is just you can see all of the information on here. We have phone numbers and emails for most everybody. Some are just emails, so if kind of depending on your preference for communication, let us know as well. If you'd rather just have an email listed, or if you have maybe an office phone that might be useful. Again, that's maybe just for coordinating meetings, communicating information and such. And the point is, this information, as we're seeing here tonight, is broadcast publicly. So, certainly if you don't want your home phone or cell phone, don't give it to us. We have that anyway privately, but in terms of what would be public, those are the information you want to think about in terms of having on this final roster. So it's kind of the project team and the steering committee. Appreciate everybody participating as we go along here. Project overview, you were given, I'll jump back to that. Excellent. I knew I could be a time filler. Well, it's, we were kind of jump around the agenda, so I think Chris owes me something. I don't know what, but we got through the project team and the introductions, but I'll let him introduce himself and then let him get jumped into this. He does have a presentation he wants to go through, and then also a visioning and brainstorming exercise as we conclude the evening here. So with that, just as we planned it, I'll turn things over to Chris Brewster as soon as he puts his stuff down. All right. So with that, again, Chris Brewster from Gould Evans, who's kind of the project manager for the overall project. I'll let Chris know. We went through the list of the project team, talked about the steering committee membership, and we're jumping back now to item 2, which is project overview. So just like we planned it, there's a that there, and you want this
Sure.
as well. Do you have all this on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's on the PDF, right? So.
We'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, good evening. Again, I'm very sorry for being late. I didn't expect a 1 hour and 25-minute drive here from downtown. It went down to 1 lane on I-70. And Dave Knopick, who's on our team, will be here also. I've been in contact with him on the way. So I am Chris Brewster with Gould Evans. I'm in the planning group there. We've been there for 12 years. I was previously with the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, in their law department, working mainly with community development group and public works on planning and development issues. For the past 12 years at Gould Evans, our planning group is focused mainly on municipal plans, such as the one we're going to undertake. My specialty personally is to do development regulation, so I understand a big part of this is to update and revise your Unified Development Code to streamline it and make it more effective in implementing the vision goals of the project. So that's going to be a large part of what we're undertaking with you all as a steering committee. I don't know how much of the overview you went through, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of highlights of our project team, and then a little bit some insights into how we think about cities and how we plan to help you all think about your own city. With us, I'll start with the big circle, us in the middle as the prime consultant. I'll be the project manager working most closely with Scott and Jim and the rest of the staff, and seeing a lot of you all the time. Also on our team is Graham Smith. He's our planning studio director. He also has 12 years experience at Gould Evans and comes to our team with prior municipal experience. He was a long-range planner with the city of Kansas City, Missouri before he came to Gould Evans. Robert Whitman is in our group as well. He is a landscape architect, urban designer. He has really developed a real specialty in Midwest climate appropriate planting. He's also a street tree expert. We use him a lot for a lot of urban design, streetscape issues, and also big picture kind of landscape policy issues that we may run into. And also in our group listed there is Dave Knopick. He's a contracted consultant with us. He previously, he'll be here in a minute, but he was previously our studio director. He left Gould Evans to go become planning director with the city of Lenexa, and then now is out on his own doing independent consulting, and we team with him frequently, and we have a 14-year relationship working together, so he's a logical fit with our team. He'll be leading the public facilitation exercises when we go into the larger community outreach and public meetings. He's very strategic at thinking about how to reach as many people as we can on issues and different exercises and things like that, so we'll talk a little bit about that more tonight. Olson Associates, immediately below Gould Evans, they are our transportation, or our urban design and infrastructure consultant, excuse me. Kevin Klinkenberg, who many of you may know from the downtown code effort, is on our team to help lead urban design when we get into the project and start looking at specific focus areas. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Kevin's very good at understanding all aspects of development. He comes at it from an architecture and urban design perspective, but he has a lot of experience in putting codes together for projects, and that's really what we think is an important aspect of this. Is I'm kind of the big picture code guy, but he deals with it from how do we get projects, and so we think that will be an important aspect when we start to look at some of the specific focus areas of our plans. Also with him is Ryan Dugdale, who will help us with any infrastructure issues, along with basically being a coordinating agent with city staff and your engineering and public works folks as we begin to look at specific infrastructure issues. To the right of our screen is Wilson and Company. They are a multimodal transportation planning company. They focus on, they have a lot of experience with communities dealing with up-and-coming new starts on transit, and we know that's an important issue for the city of Blue Springs going forward as you try to become more transit-ready in the future. So Jim Townsend is their principal with their firm, and he will be on our team, as well as Vanessa Spartan. She's a planner and urban designer that deals with transportation policy. So we'll be looking at things like complete streets, building on the bike network work that you've already done, as well as how do we focus on some centers that might become transit ready in the future for the city. Specifically, Scott probably mentioned a little bit of this, but we look at this project as 3 different projects in one. Obviously, to the left, the comprehensive plan, the thing that should guide it all, and that's what where we're going to start with. We really do want that to be very vision-oriented, and so you'll see from our project schedule, when we begin the community outreach here in the next couple months, we're going to be asking people to think big picture and long-term about their community and what you all want it, how you want it to change over time. So some of the things we focus on there are citywide development policy. We want to set up a development framework. We don't look at it as simply jumping into land use issues. We really want to set up a system that deals with how your city works, from context and places, mobility, infrastructure investments that will support that, and city image as well. We think that's really important for communities that will face some of the transitions that you all will face going forward, that a real solid foundation on how people view your city and what types of physical improvements you want to see to make it a better place. And that framework will then lead us into the sub-area planning stages that we want to get into. When I mentioned Kevin earlier, that's specifically what his role will be help us think through some of those things. So our intention is to, as we begin to develop the comprehensive plan and the citywide development policy, to focus in on 3 or 4 areas that are likely to change in the near term. And they may be areas, I know you've had some experience with this type of thinking with the 40 highway corridor plan, but what we want to look for are things that we think are ready to change with minimal effort. The market conditions might be leading towards it. We also want to look for areas that are replicable, so we might prioritize areas that the lessons we learn on focusing on them and preparing them for the next wave of development might be easily translatable to the next time you face that exact same situation. So that's our concept, and again, through the comprehensive plan study, we hope to focus in and hone in with you all on where those areas might be. But when we do that, we will study, when we select those areas, we're going to study the opportunities and constraints that are facing that area, and then apply a development framework that starts to, much like you did with your downtown plan, that starts to look at building types, street networks and types. Capital programming we think will be a big one. What types of infrastructure investments will give you a larger return on investment than others? So we will begin to look at some of those things. And then again, playing with the city image theme at the larger scale, what types of civic spaces and gathering places are going to complete that, and really give you a way to kind of incrementally and strategically transform some of those focus areas over time, and with that leave you with a development plan. Through that whole effort, my role will be to be paralleling both the large-scale policy and those specific plan issues, and begin to figure out what needs to be changed with your Unified Development Code. I know some of you planning commissioners probably already have an idea, and I understand staff has a list going that we're going to pour over. But as we start to talk about those things, I'm always going to be monitoring what types of updates are needed and kind of paralleling that process to the extent we can. We take we ease ourselves into that. The first thing we do is a Unified Development Code audit. We'll produce a review of where we're finding the largest conflicts with both the vision of the comprehensive plan and some of the planning goals of the specific areas. We'll begin to flag some of those troublesome issues beyond maybe what you've already collected and what staff has collected. From that, we'll prepare an outline that kind of looks at how we're going to, we probably don't want to throw out the code wholesale when we do these types of projects. Even communities that started thinking we're going to get a whole new development code, what we often find is there's just some things that need to be kept. There's lots of areas that aren't going to change over the community, and we can't just throw everything out. So the outline really gives us a map of how we strategically make amendments to your development code. Issue papers is another thing that we have found pretty helpful. What we try to do is we try to boil down some of the more complex development regulation topics into, for lack of a better term, a USA Today style approach that lets people know, what do your planning policies say, what do your regulations say, and then kind of draw some of the conclusions of, how does that impact the physical environment and what gets built, what kind of challenges are you running into, and then list some options for people to consider. So whether it's steering committee or the general public, we feel that kind of elevates everyone's information to the same level to where we can start to talk more freely about the development regulations and not rely on some of the more contentious things or development projects. That's usually where people encounter the regulations as contentious development projects, and that's never a good environment. So we use those issue papers to try and create a conversation about some of the changes that you might be considering to undertake with the development regulations. And we feel that prepares us to then go into, now with that discussion and dialogue and background, as the professional consultants and as staff, we think we're prepared to begin to write some changes. So it comes much later in the project. We don't just dive in and change all the regulations. We want to make sure we're doing it strategically and doing so in a way that matches a lot of the community discussion on the plans and policy level as well. This graphic sort of illustrates that big picture to small picture, and it's how we think about cities on a lot of our projects. Going across the top, land use and development is a good example of that. Oftentimes cities, as I mentioned earlier, you start at the comprehensive plan and dive right into, well, what's our future land use going to be? We prefer to start at that level talking about development patterns and not boiling it down to a simple future land use map. What types of places, what types of connections, what types of infrastructure investments are making those patterns work? What types of markets are they creating from the investments and patterns that are happening? And from there, we get a good subset of, when we dive into a smaller area, the next map over the area plan level, that's when we feel it makes sense to talk about land use. When we do that, it gives us a lot of insight into what types of relationships or complementary land uses that go into making up a good and valuable place. And so we're not just simply talking about big blobs and colors on a map. When we look at things more at the block or area scale, we can start to see things that are mutually supportive, things that maybe people would think would conflict, but because of the scale and design of them actually work well together. And so that's sort of the study we want to go into with you all. And a similar approach on transportation as well across the bottom. Major street plans, those types of things are great for the big picture items, but what they don't tell us is what types of street networks and connections you might need on a specific level. And so a lot of times if we just dive right into everything at a comprehensive level, some of those questions and nuances get overlooked. So that's why we do take this scaled approach of starting at your comprehensive plan level and then diving down into some more specific areas. We know your current comprehensive plan addresses all of the common themes, and we expect to address all of those as well. These icons are kind of some of the major topics that we run into: land use and development, transportation, urban design, infrastructure, and then economic development. One of the things we notice about the current plan is it usually doesn't dive in any further than what those top elements are: land use, functional class of streets, parks for the major urban design element, infrastructure being planned basically for growth and levels of service, and the economic development section is very heavy on continued growth of the retail sector. It was created in 2002, so it doesn't have a lot of the insight and advantages that we all have now, knowing what's happened since then. But again, by starting at the large scale and diving down into the lower scale, we plan to uncover all of those issues below that line that are going to be highlighted by looking at your city from a more project-specific basis. How do we generate projects and the types of projects people want? And it will give us all a lot of insight into what direction we need to go on some of these difficult decisions. The public engagement strategy is going to be layered to have different outreach techniques for different points in the project, and they're going to be targeted towards the different types of audiences we want to create. In the information that you all will be getting, if you haven't already got it, there's an overview of our current public engagement strategy that lets you know some of the key events and benchmarks that are coming up. But basically, on the right side, it involves all of those different types of meetings. And the left side is really why we pick different types of meetings. We want to accomplish all of those things, and different meeting types and different involvement techniques are good for some of those different objectives. But again, we start with the level of we want to inform and educate everyone, including ourselves, from you all, so that we're all dealing with a common knowledge base. From there, we start to consult and listen. What does the community want? What issues are you facing? What types of challenges can we anticipate from the data that we'll be looking at on economic development or land use or demographics? And then as we slowly begin to get more and more detailed and nuanced, we begin to collaborate and partner and establish ownership in the plan is what we ultimately want to get. We never want to get to the end of the process and have people say, well, I didn't know about that. So this project will be set up to make sure that doesn't happen. And ultimately, we'll want the community and particularly public officials and staff to have a real commitment to implementing this plan. And that's one of the reasons we're very excited about the opportunity here from all of our discussions with staff. They're ready, and I think you are ready to take a new approach to planning, and we want to help you get there. Also in the packet, as we do this with all of our steering committees, when we kick off a project, we give what the roles and responsibilities of you all are if you're new to it. As I understand, it's all planning commission and council members, so I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time. I think you guys are all used to the situation you're in as a public figure talking about development issues. But we provide that just for background information to give people an idea of what they're in for. A lot of times our steering committee have lay people involved as well. But that's another part of the initial packet that we plan to give to you. As far as overall schedule, there's a summary of the public meeting schedule and a work plan summary as well in the packet. We also have the full public engagement plan and the full work plan for you to review. If you want that level of information, we can make it available to you. Those documents are a little rough because we really do use them as they're working documents. They're changing frequently as we run into new things we need to look at in the work plan or new events that we need to schedule on the public engagement plan. But if you're interested, we have that full document that will let you know what staff and our team are planning to go through. This gives you a little bit of overview of the schedule. We know that we do want to complete the plan by November, and that means through the adoption process as well to get the plan into that. We have built in, and to the greatest extent possible, the bottom part of the schedule, the Unified Development Code, we want to parallel that. It makes a lot of sense to do it together. We like projects that do the plan and regulations together because it's a more efficient way of doing it. But we do build in a little cushion at the end for the regulations perhaps lagging behind adoption of the plan for a couple of reasons. One, we don't know how extensive the changes we might recommend or suggest may be. If they're pretty routine and some basic updates and if adding a few new provisions, we're going to be able to tag much closer to the plan adoption than otherwise. If there's major new ideas that people get excited about exploring from a regulatory standpoint, those things might lag on till later in the year. And then the other part is we want to make sure when we're going through the adoption process of regulations that there's plenty of time for the people that are there to recommend and adopt them to fully understand the extent of the changes. So we leave ourselves a little leeway there as well. That's a very quick overview of our team and our approach to the project and things that we plan on undertaking with you all. Dave is here, so we do have an exercise planned for you to start. Just to give you a little taste of what the visioning process is going to be. Again, I mentioned the first month or two of the project, as we start to reach out to the broader community, we really do want people thinking big picture long term. So I guess we'll turn it over to Dave to do that, and then any questions on the specifics of this, the work plan and our approach, or anything that comes from Dave's exercise and discussion, we can address at the end.
I don't know if I need the slides or not.
The inspirational slide
Yeah.
there for
I hadn't realized how much older you're getting until I sat behind you. Sorry, that's just something, Chris's hair is getting a lot grayer than when I first met him. Today, as I was driving in the last 24 hours on this drive, thinking about this, one of the infamous interview questions you get from a panel is always, what's the advantage of having local consultants? And as I was driving in, one of our responses was always, well, we're in town, we know the community, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on us traveling and all those good things. Well, next time I'm getting a hotel room and I will be here a day before, so I don't know how to explain it. It was just a very interesting drive over today. So I'm glad that you're bearing with us. I think Chris had the same problem on I-70 that I had on 435 tonight. As Chris had indicated, one of the jobs that I'll be working on throughout this process is the public engagement process. And as we go through it, it's going to be a relatively flexible process. You're going to find us responding to the public and things that work with the public and things that don't work with the public as we're going through the process. Tonight, what we're going to do, this is a very informal type of exercise. In fact, this is almost too formal for this exercise. But tonight, I'm just going to ask you to start the discussion a little bit with us as consultants, because we believe you do have some representative thoughts of what the community should be in the future and also what it is today. And that's generally where we start with the public, is we like to talk to them first about what is it you're experiencing today, what do you like, what don't you like, and what are your visions for tomorrow. So this is going to be a part where I'm more of a facilitator than a talker to you, and I hope you'll engage us, otherwise we'll be out of here very quickly. The first kind of thing that I'd like to bring up with you and see what your reactions are to, I want you to think about Blue Springs today as it is, not worrying about the future for the moment. One of the things that's always intriguing to us are the places that people value or don't value in their community. And I guess what I would ask you first is, can you name one place in Blue Springs or physical quality about Blue Springs that you truly value, that as you move into the future you would say, boy, don't touch this. This is really an essential part of our community, or it really displays our values. Is there a place like that in Blue Springs that you could identify?
I know I'm in the middle here, but just open this up. We're not going to be very formal on this, so everybody just jump in if there's something you want to comment. And even though we're all up here, not all on the steering committee, tonight it's open mic night, so just
Go for it.
Including our councilman. to
including
side
the
here.
councilman, yes.
Especially our councilman to the side, I
I'm
should say.
looking up here and it's all.
Yeah.
If nobody wants to jump anything in, I would say not necessarily we don't want to change it, because we do want to make some improvements to it, but I definitely don't want to lose our downtown. And we are working, I think you know that, making some significant changes right now, so
Okay.
improvements, and we want to keep that momentum going. And
Okay. Others? Other places, it can be small places, it can be places that you visit on, a daily basis, or maybe in your neighborhoods where you live, places you take your grandchildren to, or your children, or your families. What do you think? So if we're starting with a clean slate, this is going to be real easy. What do you think? Shopping areas? Places maybe that you would take visitors to when they come and visit you. Where in Blue Springs do you go with them?
Well, the new shopping development up on Coronado, it's really doing very well.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that place. What is it like? How would you
Well,
describe
there's a
it?
variety of stores,
Okay.
and we are increasing the variety. It gives people in town a place to shop, so they don't have to necessarily go to another community to do their purchasing. Again, as with the downtown, we want to continue that momentum. There's a lot of places to eat up there. Maybe too many drive-throughs, but there's a big selection.
Okay.
For me, I like the Adams Dairy Golf Course.
Okay. What do you like about it versus other golf courses?
The fees.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Okay.
So-
You have a pretty nice clubhouse there, too.
Yes,
It's not bad.
absolutely.
I enjoy the parks. I
Okay.
go to a lot of the different parks. Not to say that some of them couldn't have other things, but
Is there a park in particular that you really enjoy going to?
it's only because it's close. I always go to Railroad Park,
Okay. And that's because of proximity.
right?
Where do you all hold like community festivals and things? Where does that occur? Since you brought up parks.
The Fun Fest is
The
downtown.
festival is
It's all downtown,
She's
okay.
talking about the-
Close to
Railroad
streets.
Park,
Railroad.
Railroad Park is where they do the concerts in the park and that sort of
Okay.
thing in the summer, so.
Well, any of the parks are close, so.
Okay. What were you saying?
Yeah, Hidden Valley is a great asset if you're talking about places to show people who have any kind of an, sports lean or anything like that, because we've got all of the different, such an assortment, a large amount of fields all in one place, so.
It also brings people into town to
Yeah.
use those parks.
So it's a draw for other
Yes.
activities that are sponsored by the community, but
Yeah,
reach out.
Tournaments and such.
Okay.
So it's a very positive thing.
Okay. What else? What other things do you value? Maybe not physical things, maybe they're just qualities. Is there some type of quality about Blue Springs? Why are you all living here?
Schools,
Schools primarily?
great schools.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's still a small-town feel, too. It's,
So you've been able to retain that small-town feel even with the growth you've had as a suburban community, okay? What else?
Do you just want what we like now or what we would like?
Yeah, just what you like now.
We're concentrating
We're
on
making,
now first.
it's obvious to me we're making a short list. So, how about places you don't like? What are things about Blue Springs you don't like as far as places or qualities? Or if you were to take us out and you'd say, Dave or Chris, this is a place that we don't want to recreate again in the future.
7 Highway.
Okay.
Certain portions of 7 Highway. And it's a real issue with people in the community.
Okay? Is it about the flow of the traffic, or is it the land uses, or is it everything?
It's
or-
kind of a combination.
Okay, okay.
All the abandoned buildings around town.
Is there a concentration of them in some places, or is it really scattered throughout the community?
There's some places, but they're pretty scattered also.
Yeah, there are a couple of shopping areas that are very old and don't look like they're ever going to be improved, and we need to, that would be a good idea, yes.
Okay?
You know the one I'm thinking of, don't you?
Can we throw a name out there, or?
Sure, I'll throw a name out there, it's
Okay.
White Oak.
Okay. All right. Okay. What else? Could use some fixing. What do you think?
North 7 Highway.
North 7? Okay.
And when you get on the other side of the bridge, it stops. Even though it runs for another 30 miles, it just stops.
Okay. Is that the road configuration primarily, or?
I have no clue.
Okay.
When you
You
get
just-
past Duncan Road, virtually everything stops.
That's
All
it.
retail stops, everything stops.
Okay, so the whole development pattern and everything, there's nothing beyond Duncan Road?
Well, gas stations.
Okay. What else?
Amenities on Woods Chapel then. So if you get it, we get it.
What's interesting to me about what you're talking about right now, I'm not really hearing anything about your residential areas, your neighborhoods, the places that people live. You hear about schools, I hear about commercial areas. What about the neighborhoods? Are they strong neighborhoods? Are they not strong neighborhoods? Are they just typical suburban places? Is there something about them that are special or not special? What do you think?
I think maybe there's a few of them that are special, but overall, I don't know that there's any one that's really, the downtown historic area has a
Right.
very cohesive homeownership, down in their residence. But I don't know that any of the subdivisions necessarily have that same.
Okay.
Some do. I think it depends on how, if they have home associations and if they're very active, or if the neighborhoods, depending on how big it is, are very close. Neighbors help each other. And I think that's where, it really doesn't matter where you live. Worst comes to worst, neighbors will help neighbors.
Okay. Okay. But you would describe, in general, Blue Springs neighborhoods as pretty average compared to other places physically?
Well, as to where?
In Kansas City, in the Kansas City metro area?
We're average.
Okay.
And I think the nice thing is that there's something here for just about everybody that wants to live here, and maybe not for some that want higher
Density.
homes,
Okay.
but in overall,
So you
make it,
do,
it's affordable
okay,
for most families to raise children here.
okay. Good.
Even though the traffic can be bad.
Yeah, I-70 and that's a little out of Blue Springs' control. It is what it is, right? So, okay.
Can I go way outside the box?
Sure.
For the future? Here's what I think would be really cool, because we've got, we're almost like a tic-tac-toe city. We've got Adams Dairy, 7 Highway, Woods Chapel, and, you know, you've got Duncan Road and all the way down. I don't know, they keep talking about a trolley car in Kansas City. We could really eliminate a lot of cars if we had trolley cars that just, or something that just ran all across the city, where you could hitch a ride and go up and get off, and we wouldn't need all these cars going up and down the highways.
You don't like that 20-minute drive to get from one end of town to the other?
Well, just think of how many cars you would eliminate, and all the kids that wouldn't have to drive, they could take that.
If they would.
Well, I mean, if you're thinking of outside the box in the future.
I understand.
You know, we, was it 2 weeks ago when we went to that seminar on changing population dynamics? I got an eye-opener on that. Yes, I think maybe the plan should incorporate what they think is going to happen in the future as far as getting rid of the stigma of multifamily housing. I think that you possibly could have more of that and have it pretty upscaled type housing and do away with a lot of those issues like you're talking about. But they had a lot of good, interesting points in that seminar.
Who all went to that seminar, the group that's around here? Just a few of you? You want to share a little bit about the demographic information they shared?
Well, what I got out of it was and the guy that was giving it was like 42 or 43.
Well, it was Kevin.
Kevin.
Okay.
And I'm thinking,
Okay.
okay, well, this guy, he's pretty
Okay.
young, but yet he was even talking about a group younger than him, and talking about how they don't want to drive. They don't have drive. A lot of them don't have driver's license. They don't want to drive. They would rather ride a bus than to drive. They want walkability. They want to share stuff. That's the issues that they're talking about. So I think if you're talking about a plan, I think you better be good to look at some of those issues.
And that's what, there was a question on my list here that we were going to go to, and you've made the transition real nice to the future. And I think that's one of the questions that's here is, how would you describe the typical resident in Blue Springs in 20 years? What do you think they look like compared to what's at this table right now?
Well, if we take what we got out of that meeting, they're really talking a lot about downsizing of the size of homes, especially as the baby boomers get older and they don't want to deal with the upkeep of the higher scale housing that we've kind of gotten used to living in. A lot of the young people wanting to go to more of the loft type properties, the walkability areas where they can walk where they want to go, instead of, you know, getting in a car and driving 45 minutes to go wherever they're going to hang out. So, I mean, if you really look at that, that's kind of what's coming.
And I think you're going to see a lot more people who are either working from home or hopefully working close to home, so that we're not spending an hour or an hour and a half driving into the city, and that, I'd really like to see that.
Yeah. I'll share a little bit with you. That's a decision I made about a year and a half ago, is now I'm a consultant out of my house. Instead of working, I worked for the city of Lenexa previously, and then actually worked with Chris prior to that, and had commutes into downtown. And so it's kind of that same decision model. Where are we going with that? So you could see that. You could see people working from home here in Blue Springs. in the future.
Or again, having a job that's here, where you've got a 5 or a 10-minute commute versus a 25 or 30-mile.
How do you all feel about that, having more employment opportunities and choices in the future here? Are there segments of the economy that you'd love to see and segments that you would not like to see here as far as that opportunity for jobs?
We need jobs.
And what we need are not necessarily retail and food jobs. We need, sustainable professional jobs.
Right.
And I think, for myself anyway, I don't think we want heavy manufacturing type, and we don't have a place for it.
Okay.
And no matter what plan we come up with, we're not going to create a place for that.
Okay.
But light industrial, so it can still be a blue collar type thing, doesn't have to all be white collar,
Okay.
but something where you can make a living wage.
It's really important, as we look at this plan, that we really get into the transit. The rail is a really big deal, and it will bring so much to this community, and we have to adapt our comprehensive plan so that we're ready for that, and that economic development that it will bring.
Okay.
Well, and I think that kind of leads us to kind of what I wanted to bring up a while ago, and that was a larger community area to include pool areas and things like that, where like the high schools or other organizations can hold swim meets. I don't know if you've ever been to the Gladstone community area out there. I know they built that a few years ago, but it's awesome. It's not huge, but the way it's set up, it houses a lot of different activities, even a small indoor little water park for the small siblings of the people that are there involved in some of the others. And it's been a wonderful addition to that community. And I could see something like that being very beneficial for Blue Springs, whether it's to incorporate the pool that we already have, maybe something along the lines of where White Oak Plaza is. I know cost goes into that a lot, but I think at the same time that would bring in revenue and also open up for jobs as well.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing that feasibility study. I mean, we've got that in the works.
Yeah, I know we
So-
do, but I think as far as the
For the
future
community
plan
center?
goes, yes.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges for us, and this is, I want you to kind of put that aside on feasibility and budgets right now. And that's a hard thing for a lot of communities to do, but when we're talking about this 20-year period, 30-year period, when you're looking out, one of the ways to start out with that is to truly get away from the parameters that usually constrain our thinking. And looking into, it's kind of like bringing up the out-of-the-box idea, right? The trolley car and other things. You have to have some of those thoughts come forward. And that's what we're going to be doing with the community too, is you want to have some of those ideas and thoughts come forward. No matter how ridiculous they may seem to you at first, many times those are the nuggets or the kernels of thought that spur on the realities that you can start really pursuing. Because what you're doing is you're getting a gauge for what are people looking for. And that's critical. That's highly critical to do. And that's part of this conversation for you all, is to do the same thing. Because when we're in these meetings, that's one of the things we're going to be expecting from you all. We need to have that thought discussion going on, because ultimately you're living in this community, 24 hours a day. We're not, even though we're in the Kansas City area, we're still not living here 24 hours a day. So it's important to have that perspective. It's interesting, I'm going to go back to a little bit. So what would you experience in downtown in the future? If you were to walk through downtown, what is it you want to see down there? Or what do you think these residents, this demographic that will be here in the future, will want to see or experience in the downtown area that's different from today?
Fine dining.
Okay?
Okay, can I jump in?
Go for it.
You're part of the steering
Yeah,
committee too,
yeah,
so
go
absolutely,
for it.
jump
It's-
right in.
okay.
Because you're off here tucked away, doesn't mean.
Well, just on some of the comments you all made earlier, and I'm kind of going off of that. You know, Blue Springs was formed as a bedroom community. They came out here to live in schools and that type of thing. And you mentioned demographics. Our demographics, I think, are getting older. As we lived here, we've evolved, we've gotten older, our kids have grown up, you know, some of them have stayed. And I think we're missing the boat on the new, younger, I don't want to say clients that we could go for, in that younger adults are either getting married or living together longer, having kids or putting off kids longer. And so they're looking for, basically some of the things you said, they're looking for walkability, entertainment, things that are close to home. And being a bedroom community and being a, not necessarily an outer ring, but close to an outer ring bedroom community, we need to have some things that make that convenient for them to come out here, or we're going to lose those people. And then you're going to end up segregating yourself into just a narrow field of what comes out to Blue Springs or wants to live out to Blue Springs. So I think we need to take that into our consideration, and you hit about it like downtown. It won't change unless you can create an attraction that would maybe bring some people that are wanting that kind of a lifestyle, that type of entertainment, that type of dining. Those are some of the things we need to maybe think about in the future.
Well, and I think going along with that area, it's going to have to be denser, probably, you know, maintenance-free type situations where those younger people don't want to be involved, don't want a yard, don't want, you know, they want a high-end on the inside, but not necessarily on the outside.
That was one of the points they brought out at the meeting, was that living in the next number of years is going to be going up instead of a big yard or, 5,000 square foot house. But to have that living, it's sure more cost effective because you put a lot more space up this way, and return on investment is much better and more units per square foot. And as a builder, Jim recognizes that the return on the investment is good, but to get people there, you got to have something.
There's got to be an attraction to keep them.
Go to.
Right, right. So having attractions is important, going back to that walkability is important, things like that. What about places like White Oak? What does that look like in your minds redeveloped?
Bulldozed.
Bulldozed, yeah. So just a vacant land would be good.
Yeah, green field would be a lovely thing.
I'd like to jump in and kind
Okay.
of jump on what Kent was saying. And you asked about downtown and how that might look different. You know, if we get this rail thing passed, we're going to have a train station downtown. That's going to spur development. And I can see that younger demographic that we're talking about living in loft housing downtown. They may work in Kansas City, but they'll come back to Blue Springs and maybe loft housing, restaurants like Susan's talking about. And then when you look north of I-70, I think one of the holes in our game is a lack of entertainment. We have a movie theater that, to be kind, is an embarrassment. And what I would like to see is some sort of entertainment district developed that would encompass a new movie theater, maybe working the bowling alley into that, because that's a nice facility, and maybe that area spurs sit-down restaurants, because my constituents, one of the biggest complaints they have is a lack of sit-down restaurants in Blue Springs. It's all fast food or drive-through. Or you wait 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay. Other thoughts or comments off of that?
I think that statement really applies to the entire city. It's not just District 1. I think the entire city, that is the big thing that you hear. There's no place to eat. We have to go someplace else to eat. There's no place to go have a drink and listen to music. They're few and far between here, and we need that. And I know that the younger generation, they like that stuff. They like the, outdoor theater. I mean, you go downtown Kansas City and they've got the Shakespeare in the Park, and it's always packed. It's the younger kid, younger than me. But I mean, it's the younger generation. They look for that, but they don't want to drive 5 miles to do it. They want to have it in their own community.
what you're describing to me in the current scenario, when I keep hearing this, is everything except sleeping here, people go out of town to do.
An awful lot of people do.
Is that, okay, a lot of people do, okay. So that's a pretty typical day. They may work out of town, they come home, maybe pick up the wife and the children, or the husband and whatever, and then they go out to eat, and then maybe, down the road again, because they're
Or on
outside town.
weekends, you know,
Okay, they disperse out.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So one of the goals or one of the visions that I hear you talking about is that idea of how do we keep people here in the community, not just to live, but to do the activities.
To really live.
Okay.
Not just to come home and sleep and eat dinner and
Okay.
go
Well,
back out again.
And not just on evenings and weekends, but lifelong. So
There you go.
that you graduate from high school, you go to college, and you come back here, you don't end up somewhere else.
And I agree, I think we have to look at all the generations, the ones coming up and the ones that are here, and really focus on what they need. Because I remember when I came here, it was very small. And it suited me fine because I came from a small town. But my children don't live here anymore, because there's nothing really here to offer them. Like, so they go to other cities.
One of the things, too, that we've been talking about a lot is the Missouri Innovation Park. And if that thing builds out to its potential, we'll have those high-end jobs that will keep kids here once they graduate.
Okay. So that's a pretty critical
I think it
component to
is.
keep nurturing? Okay. And therefore, in the way I'd look at it, is therefore also you want to be in a mode with your planning of protecting that over the long haul. So making sure circulation continues to work around it, making sure that there's easy access for people to get to it and go back home, things like that. Okay, good.
Well, that, and keep it contemporary enough that it doesn't age around it to where now it becomes a second-rate piece of property as opposed to a highly prized piece of property. I mean, that's one of the things you can protect it, but you can protect it so long that now it's not. I think maybe in some aspects, maybe White Oak, we're going to go back to that, but that property is not changed since I've lived out here, it seems like. And maybe we need to do something to make that to where it's not, to where all of a sudden it has to be something better instead of being condemned to what it is now.
Right, right. So maybe looking at things through an evolutionary process versus, and when I say that, one of the things I talk to people about a lot is when they point to the plaza and say, boy, the plaza is a great shopping district, is to understand that's an 80-year evolution. The plaza was not designed this way nor planned this way in 1929. It was XYZ suburban shopping district primarily, but somehow through the value of the place over time has allowed it to retain those values and that attractive quality and ability. And that's what I kind of hear you talking about, is how do you keep that over time?
Yeah.
So, we can set it up, but if we're not diligent about evolving it as times change, that's when it falls behind.
It's kind of like Adams Dairy for us. It originally started out to be more of a corporate woods, was the visioning of it to come out with, and it actually evolved, I think, and changed over time, and now it is what it is, which is very successful out in that area. So you want to make sure that you don't lose that momentum, but then don't, again, protect it and keep it to where we can make it into the next stage.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about how people move around in the community in the future. What do you think? I've heard the trolley car idea. I've heard about walkability. What's the role of the automobile in the future, you think, in Blue Springs?
I think there'll be less. I think you may see a lot more of like bike riding,
Okay,
even in the young adults.
okay.
I think the trend in cars is to go smaller from what I see, but I think there's a good chance that the thrill of driving cars everywhere is diminishing, and
Okay.
public transportation doesn't look so bad.
I know tonight for Chris and I, the thrill diminished. But, okay. What else? How else do you see people moving around?
Well, I think the way that the city is laid out right now, I don't think you can ever get rid of it, because we've got too many cul-de-sacs and dead-end roads and things like that where you just can't do public transportation or anything like that. It just doesn't work.
Okay. So the automobile's still in the mix?
It's got to
Okay.
still be in the mix.
Okay, all right.
Can I bring up one of my issues with transportation in town?
Yes.
The North Outer Road basically lets out to 7 Highway and Woods Chapel. And it feels to me, and I've had discussions with people in the city about this, that we need another ramp to get from, the north side or the south side to the north side when school lets out. I mean, if you are unfortunate enough to be here when school lets out, trying to get from the outer road to 7 Highway, you'll sit there for a half hour. Football game, same way. I think we need either a bridge over 70 or a tunnel under it, but one more way to get from south to north.
How does I-70 function for you all currently? That's a good point, that's why I'm raising, I'm going to take your point and roll with it. How does it work for you currently? It sounds like it's a barrier, one, for cross
Definitely is a
traffic.
dividing line, yeah.
Okay. Does the community feel a split? Do you think the north side, south side kind of dynamic? I mean, I've lived in communities, like when I lived in Wichita, there was an east-west dynamic. You were either a west sider or you were an east sider, and everybody knew you wanted to be a west sider. Do you get that same kind of play here? Does I-70 do that?
I think we're split
Okay.
north of 70, we're split, District 2, 40 to 70, and we're split south of 40.
Okay.
Phil brought it up and made an excellent point. I mean, if you're coming from the north side of town, you drive to I-70, you make a right turn. If you're in the middle of town, and even to the south a little bit, if you're going north on 7, you hit I-70, you make a left. I mean, you look at traffic patterns on a Saturday, is bumper to bumper can be backed up from I-70 to R.D. Mize and past and it's a left lane that's backed up. The right lane is doing fine because everybody's going to the interstate. So it's great that we have that mode of convenience to get around as far as downtown and interstate. That's I mean, a lot of communities would love to have that. They don't have that running through their community, but it is a barrier.
Okay. How did y'all feel when he was talking about the idea that the community is really 3 geographic areas? North, central, south. Is that a fair description? And how do people currently operate in that framework? I like your description of saying, yeah, if you live in downtown, you hit I-70, you take a left. If you're north of that, you take a right. What other functions are kind of breaking you up in that sense or dictating how people flow through the community?
We always got to go somewhere else to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Live in
Okay.
District 2.
I think the east side of 7's been developed a lot. It's been total focus
Okay.
up until just this year when we finally have some activity on the west side. But it's been how many years, Jim, we had to go somewhere else?
So there's an east-west kind of
Oh,
dividing
yes.
too. Okay, okay.
We're kind of like been neglected for a long time.
Okay.
On
It's
the
coming.
west side.
The new road, it's coming.
Yeah, and we're dealing with it, we know. I'm not saying that's not a good thing.
But I think it's an interesting dynamic, again, to talk about how you're moving around your community currently and how you're doing your daily activities. Because not only is this about a relationship to downtown Kansas City, if we start talking about bringing jobs into Blue Springs and other activities, now you've got to talk about circulation within the community itself. And how do you do that? How do you get potentially across I-70? How do you deal with the east-west movement across Highway 7 or having a dynamic of development balance on both sides? So it's interesting to hear you talk in those terms because I think from the planning perspective for Chris and others, that's going to be an interesting dynamic to explore with the public too. So, okay. What about...
If I could jump
go
in on
ahead.
what she was just saying there, I think what happened was when Adams Dairy Parkway was built, it was ripe for development. It's a brand-new road. Everybody wants to be there. What we're doing with Woods Chapel Road is going to make it ripe for development. It's going to be a brand-new road. It's going to have a revolutionary diverging diamond interchange on I-70. I think you're going to see new development want to be there. Then the issue will become the center of the city, which a lot of people, I think, perceive as the older part of town. I don't want to say lower end, but...
More mature.
But that's our challenge moving forward, is how do we take the middle part of the city and bring it up to speed?
Without ruining what is down.
Right.
Right. To a certain extent, you all like downtown at its scale, and I guess the way it's framed is what I hear. Because you've invested time in planning your downtown, you've invested time in pursuing this type of scale, if you will. It's that small town, almost Main Street kind of character. I assume that's kind of the direction the community sees its downtown, maybe with more dense housing around it, but certainly.
Actually, its scale could be larger, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's one of the things that really hurt us, I think, initially, and I'm going back, Ken will realize, because we've gone through different plans and studies, it's, they looked at it as downtown as basically 2 blocks. I mean, that's it. And if you just concentrate on those 2 blocks right on Main, there's not much of a downtown. So I think the scale needs to be encompassing, and it's doing more of that. We came back with the latest plan, and we broadened that scale out. I mean, we've gone, width and breadth on it. And maybe part of the deal is look at some of that industrial area. If that industrial area would go to maybe some other areas, then you have some development. The old lumber yard is a perfect opportunity if we get rail in, that you've got an area there that could develop, that whole quadrant right there would expand out, and that would almost double the size of our downtown. So in some aspects, the scale needs to be larger. I mean, even in small towns, they're built around a square. I mean, you go to a small town, they're built up around a square. Ours is just 2 blocks.
Yeah, you need a little bit larger area to have momentum. You feel like you can't build up any momentum because there isn't quite enough there.
Okay. George, you've been awful quiet. I'm gonna start, this is the part where people who haven't been talking are gonna get drug in a little bit. So, what do you think about what you heard? What do you agree with or disagree with, or what do you feel hasn't been said that needs to be said?
Well, I agree with everything that people said. I think if you want to keep younger people here, though, you definitely have to have something for them to do. I mean, I can't see anybody living downtown Blue Springs because there's not really activities compared to downtown Kansas, Missouri, or other places like that. I think it is a challenge to keep our kids here because I have 4 kids too and still live in Blue Springs. But I think, we talk about ways of get around town. One of my pet peeves is we have a really elaborate bike riding program, but when I drive up down I-70, just looking at where the bikes are supposed to go, where they're not supposed to go, confuses the heck out of me, who have never been educated on how we're supposed to drive. In fact, there's been people getting quite a few tickets because they're, pulled off on the side of the road, which our city hasn't really educated us on how to use a bike pass. I think I understand the density of population trying to get smaller homes. People don't want the big homes anymore, but I still think when I moved here 33 years ago, there was some major subdivisions which kind of drew other people to come here, and we just don't see that anymore. That's kind of, to me, I call it, like the Winterset and some of those other subdivisions with the lake and condominiums here, plus the family housing. We just don't see that much anymore. And like I say, where I work at, every time we have change in management, we have people come in, they kind of bypass Blue Springs because they just think the housing there isn't, we've kind of gone to some really, really nice, bigger subdivisions that had, to me, a lot more of a appeal to outsiders. Now we're just kind of like the normal. I mean, nothing really real special to me as far as I'm concerned. And I have a lot of my people in my cul-de-sac I live in. I'm the only person still there who's built my house. Everybody else has actually moved out of Blue Springs. So, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity in the city, and we just have to, try to be more conscious of what's going to happen in the future. I think a rail line would be great because my wife works downtown, rides the bus, which is a really good thing we have here in Blue Springs by having those buses just run from Blue Springs downtown. But what we could have rail, that would probably have more people living out here that could commute.
I'm gonna, before I put Travis on the spot, I'm gonna throw a little bit of a twist on something you've said, and I've heard it a couple times come up here tonight about wanting to keep our children here and things like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this just a little bit on you, and I'm going to have you think about what is it you're doing to attract children from other places to here. And the reason I want to throw that at you is the way our dynamic seems to be working is parents work very hard to get their children to go to college. The kids, as a point of success, leave the area going to those places. As a point of success in their young lives and career development, they're heading all over the country. So now what you're seeing is they may have a time where they come back here, but I would say while they're gone, what are you doing to replace them with children from other places? So it's a little bit of a twist on that dynamic to think about. So now I'm going to put you on the spot, Travis, because you've been a little bit quiet. What do you think about what's been said so far?
I think the downtown, expanding the downtown would be a good idea if we are getting some rail. It kind of sounds like what Lee Summit might have, and Lee Summit's done a great job expanding their downtown from more than just the main streets to the outer the streets, and if we could do that, I think that would be great. Bring in the entertainment that might keep the younger people in town. As far as the smaller homes, I don't know if I'm completely sold on that's where things are going. I hear people want to scale back, people want to spend less money. I do a smaller home, put a 2-car garage on it, people come in and say, we still want a 3-car garage, we want more room. So,
and granite
you can have
countertops.
planners tell you one thing, but the people that come out to buy them tell you something different. Especially the same with going up. I think people out in our area still like their space as well. So it's going to be a mentality and education of the people. And, you know, I hate to say tell them that's what they want, but if that's the route you want to go, that's kind of what you have to do is kind of make people think that's what they want or show them that's what they want or that fits their needs. Because when you look at lofts and younger people, you look at downtown and they have everything right there. So unless you can give them everything right there, it's not going to fly out here. So.
Okay. I'll have you guys respond to this. A few years ago, I was doing work with Shoal Creek Valley up in the Northland. If you know what that area is like, and there's a village area that's higher density housing and things like that. And the development team, when they changed developers out there, the development team came in and found the real estate people didn't even know how to sell that kind of development. So it wasn't just like you're talking about, it wasn't just I can build it, it's how do you sell it also. Exactly. And it's a very important point, it's a subtle point because a lot of these folks are buying into a total community, not just the house. And what real estate people are used to doing is selling the house and not the total community.
And then what Ginger had hit on with the community center or community area, and Susan said what we're looking into isn't what Gladstone has though. Because I sat in the meeting about our community center and listened to the people talking about it, and they're wanting more than what is being offered. We're not being offered the pools that can house a swim meet like that. So I think when you're looking at spending the dollars on something like that, you need to look at that you're spending them wisely as well, and not just building something to build it and it's not going to fit the needs of the majority of the people.
We'll swing over here. Joe, what do you think?
Without jobs, it's tough to get the people coming in. It's a key to the, you can plan, you can have high, you can have big, but without jobs, the schools are here, we do have the schools, but they're everything but the jobs. People have to go somewhere else to work.
So the innovation part, that's a critical part of that job mix.
Absolutely would be.
Okay. Are there components of the economic side for jobs that Blue Springs should look into in the future that they're not, even considering innovation park and what's being talked about there? Are there other elements that we should be looking at?
Without tax incentives, and as we hear about all the time, between, it's tough to bring any type of business. You have so many professional people, doctors, and now, hospital may be closing, or we don't know that, or I'm assuming we don't, I assume it probably will, but it's a tough sale. You got to have something to sell, and, the schools is a good selling point, but you need a lot more besides that.
Yeah. Okay.
Without, often jobs that people have to work, have to drive to work wherever it may be. Whether you're manufacturing or what it is, jobs is what's essential for the lifeblood of any community.
Okay. What does your physical infrastructure look like in the future? Water, sewer, stormwater, roads? What does it look like? You talked about Highway 7 a little bit with the bike lane and the confusion of that adaptation. What about other elements of the infrastructure? What does a roadway look like in your mind in the future?
I'd like to see them all avenues instead of roads.
Okay, when you say avenue, describe that for me, or give me tell me an
A little bit of
avenue.
greenery, something that looks nice, that's not loaded with parking lots lining up and down, something besides macadam
Okay,
on both sides of the road.
okay.
A few trees, something. I don't think we have done a good job, particularly when I look at 7 Highway, and I mean, it's been there forever. So, but I would like to see us, and we have discussed this, why can't the parking lots be on the other side of the buildings and have the cross traffic behind the buildings, so that when you go down, whether it be 7 Highway or any other road that you go down, that you're not looking at parking lots on both sides and stores right up against. If you can put the stores closer to the road, but I think that you need to make them attractive. It's an eyesore.
Okay.
And I think it's a shame when somebody says to me, well, I'm bringing so-and-so into town, and I'm gonna go all the way past 7 Highway to Adams Dairy, so I can come down Adams Dairy all the way to the south side of town, so I don't have to bring them down 7 Highway.
So one of the places that
Somebody can bring them
the 7
down
Highway.
Woods Chapel, because it'll be really beautiful over there, and it'll look nice landscaping, and yeah, you bring them down Woods Chapel.
Back to 7 Highway, if I may. And I know this is expensive, but one of the things when I look down 7 Highway and I see all those electrical poles and wires hanging everywhere, I'd love to see all that buried.
We had talked about that. I don't know whatever happened, because we were going to take a section of 7 Highway and bury that. We had it all drawn out.
I don't know what you mean by we, but,
We were all getting out there with a shovel.
that might be what it takes. This might be what it takes. No, 2001, no, good point, though, thinking about that as we're talking here. In 2001, we did a Highway 7 corridor plan, and that was part of that discussion.
Right.
Back then. But, there was talk, I think, about kind of a pilot project.
Yes, I
For
don't know
that, and
whatever
it just-
happened to the pilot.
That's a good point.
He went out.
I don't know. I think we had applied for funding that was just before I got here, was when all that was happening. I think funding was applied for to do some of that, and it didn't get anywhere.
But it was very nice, because we did exactly
Yes.
what Dale's talking about. It was
Right.
going to get rid of all the power lines and the power poles.
So, the design was put together. I think just the implementation that piece was missing.
Yeah.
That piece was missing.
And
As
you
I
and
recall,
I are we, and everybody else up there.
the cost estimates on that were just so outrageous that it just kind of killed it on arrival. I mean, it just.
Well, and again, KCP&L bought out a quote. I mean, there's a different, that was back the MoPub days. I mean,
Yes.
enough has changed in the last 12 years or so that I think that's certainly worth looking at again. Like I said, I think that's one of the plans we need to look at as a group. That and we have the area plan that was essentially, attached back in 2009 to this.
Yes.
There are a couple plans that, downtown master plan, a lot of good pieces, good bones out there, as it were, that I think need to be picked through again and just see, what was missing. Why didn't it get done? Was it the economy? Was it the, 2001 Highway 7 quarter plan? I'm thinking kind of implementation piece was kind of missing. We kind of hoped for some pilot project, like you're saying. It didn't happen, and then poof, that was it.
And
then
I think is a shame too, because we have had that happen more often than it should, where we have had some plans, a lot of money been invested in doing some of these glorious plans, and the plans sit there and they just sort of disappear, and we haven't gotten anywhere with them.
Now, I'm going to put the council members off to the side a little bit so they don't hear this part. Do you think that's a failure on the public policy part of planning, or is it a failure more of it was identified as something the private sector should do and would take care of?
I think you have to have buy-in. You know, you can, the city can, and the council, the city staff can come up with these things, but if you don't get buy-in and you don't market that, it's not going to happen. And I think we fail on how we market things to the community in a lot of ways.
Because that's going to be important to this project overall, number one. I mean, as we start having that interface with the public, that's going to be a critical base point for how this plan moves forward with implementation. So you've got kind of a history of failing in the marketing.
Part of that problem with buy-in, again, is that bedroom community mentality where people come out here, they sleep, and they have a lot of, I don't want to disparage anybody, but they really don't know what's going on in town. And whether it's because they don't want to know, because they don't have time, because they're, working elsewhere, or because we're not getting the word out to them, But there's a lot of people who just really have no clue as to what's going on in Blue Springs, even though they live here.
But that also comes back to the marketing.
Yeah.
The marketing issue.
How do you reach them? And some you just realize you aren't going to reach. I mean, that happens.
Sure.
So, okay. Well, let me throw this wrap up out here for you to think about. So what's the one most critical item in your mind that this plan needs to address about the future of Blue Springs? The one most critical item.
Say commercial parks are to bring businesses in the future to this area.
Okay.
When
If a business wanted to come here, matter of fact, where would they go?
I kind of jump ahead a little bit to the UDC part of it, but simplicity, the whole process needs to be simple.
Okay.
Of either knowing what you can do or can't do and getting it done needs to be a very simple process instead of, well, we've got part of the regulation over here and then you have to go 6 chapters over to find out what kind of plants you can put in with what you've already, make it simple.
Okay.
As simple as possible.
Okay.
So that anybody can understand it.
All right.
That's a good idea.
That's 2 of you. What else?
Well, I'll put a little bit. If you're going to take the innovation park that we have out there in the parkway, you also need to make it a destination spot, just not where they're building office buildings. You need to do a Prairie Village, you need to do a Brookside. In other words, you got to do long-term planning to get that all in there. If the kids come and work, my kids are like everybody else, so they're gone. But they want to work and play at the same place, okay? They want to party hard, they want to work hard, but they don't want to have to drive in the morning very far to get to where they have to go.
Okay.
And out here, I've been driving downtown for 40 years. It's easy for me to get in the car and go. The only difference is some days it's a 20-minute drive and some days it's an hour drive. Kids don't understand that. They want to get there in 5 minutes. Everything is quick with them. Get done with work, they want to be partying immediately. They don't want to drive an hour, go home and change, and then party. They want to go straight from work to party, go home and do their deal. But like I said, we don't have a destination place. Blue Springs is one big giant destination. I mean, you want to get a hamburger, we got 74,000 places to get a hamburger, all over. But you don't have a place to go that you could eat and drink and party all in a little spot.
Okay. All right. What else? I'm going to stare at you until you say something.
So I don't know, I'm kind of the ultra conservative one. I like Blue Springs just the way it is.
Okay.
I came out here for the schools, and you also have to look at the crime. So, and I think once you get into younger people, into these lofts and all, and partying and things, I think when they get ready to start families, and you look at raising a family, I think people look at Blue Springs.
Okay.
Because it's a small family, schools are great, crime is down. I think we've got a good police department. It's just not a lot of partying. You see people that do have families, they may go to the Power and Light District, they don't want their kids near there, they want to come back to Blue Springs. I think we do need to add some more amenities, and, you know, a Parks and Rec. I think we need another movie theater. I think we need to do some things with 7 Highway and some other things, but for the most part, I think that's what makes Blue Springs.
Okay. Okay.
I will say, as I've traveled across the state last year, it was nothing like pulling in home. And when you think, I was down in Springfield, and every block there was a light.
Yeah.
So, and I've been to a lot of the communities across the state last year, and it was always so nice. It's almost like, I agree with you, that we don't have everything, and I don't think that we came out here thinking we'd ever get everything, but it is a really nice, comfortable, safe feeling.
Yes.
Someplace that you feel like, you know, somebody's going to want to live here.
I could back up to something you said earlier. You said, how are we, when our kids leaving, how are we getting kids to come out here? Well, if you think about why we all came out here, I think, it was because of the school district.
Absolutely.
You know, we wanted to educate our kids, and this was the best place in the Kansas City area, we all thought, to do that. And I think that's still true.
Okay. You brought up an interesting point. How about this? What community have you been to relatively recently that you'd say, boy, if Blue Springs was just like this would be cool? Or maybe as a community that you look at with favor, and it doesn't have to be in Missouri or Kansas, or, you know, that you've visited. Some place where you've seen things that work and wish, man, this is what I'd like to have. Go for it.
I'll tell you, the villages in Florida.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do, cars, you drive around in your little golf cart.
Or the ocean side in Bahamas, that would work too.
Yeah, the ocean's kind of hard to bring in here, but, and so are some of the mountains.
Downtown Denver has done a fantastic job about making that real walkable down there.
Just from the framework standpoint, things, yeah, okay.
You know, when I talk about an entertainment district, and I've said that a lot, and I'm going to be saying that a lot in the years to come, I think, until it finally happens, but I think about KCK. It was a downtrodden area. Sure, they got the big speedway out there, and everything exploded around that. If we could do something on a much smaller scale for Blue Springs, I think we'd spur development that we want.
Okay, all right.
There's got to be a happy medium. I don't think any of us want to see the whole downtown turn into lofts and all of that. My son and his wife live in Evanston, and I love going up there. You can walk downtown. They have beautiful things downtown, but you can also jump on the L. You can go down into downtown Chicago. So you don't want Chicago coming out there, but you have the ability to get to that type of entertainment if you want to. But you still have that smaller community feel where we walk down several blocks and you can be downtown and grab a sandwich and people communicate with each other, they talk, they're very friendly. Now, it is a college town, I mean, but...
But still got other components to it.
It does, it really does.
What I'm looking for is something to benchmark against in your mind because there's places you've experienced that you obviously like going to. I have places like that. My daughter lives outside of Fort Collins. Downtown Fort Collins is one of those places I like to visit, when I'm down there. And so I have that image of what that is. And that's kind of what I'm asking you, is a little bit of that, kind of that image that sticks back there that you say, if I was to redevelop White Oak, or I was to look at the downtown, or I was to look at other components of Blue Springs, what would I benchmark those towards? What things? Because that gives us clues to do our research too, and we can start looking at those places and seeing what it is about the qualities that you're trying to get to.
I can get a little closer to home. My wife grew up in Brookside.
Okay.
And I love the Brookside-Waldo area. Because, again, it's not necessarily a large downtown area, but it's got a lot of variety. It's got, you can stop one place and you can go up and down 4 or 5 blocks and you can get anything you need.
Okay. Okay. Where else?
Well, I walked down around Washington DC, San Francisco, Chicago. I mean, there's a lot of places I've been to, you know.
And they're obviously big, those are big
And St.
places,
Louis,
but,
down at the Landing, you know, if you want to talk about every place I go, I try to find where is the place that you go. New Orleans, you know, however you say it. But, and I don't drink, so I don't know. But, you know, there's always some place where everybody kind of goes, and we don't really have any place where everybody goes.
right, it's that
And-
destination spot again that we
And
heard
just
about.
like dinner and, like you're talking about downtown. It'd be nice, there's no place to stay downtown. So unless somebody knows where it's at, but even if they get there, there's not really anything open.
You know,
At
that's a good
night.
point, too. We haven't got any place, if I have company from out of town and I want to put them in a nice hotel, we have really only one place to go.
Well, fancy, but the rest of them are nice, some of them are nice, so it's just that there's nothing down that direction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But even out at Adams Dairy, there's no place really out, well, except for there,
Yeah,
to
except for
stay.
Adams, yeah.
But it's harder to walk, if you want to walk up there and get it, whatever.
I'm going to wrap it up because it's 8 o'clock or a little past 8 o'clock. Understand, all we're doing in this conversation is starting to frame some things, that's all. That's all, and all I'm really trying to do is get you all comfortable about talking about some of these things. Because as we meet and as we do things, it's going to be open discussion, you know, and we're going to be showing you examples of things and trying to get a feel for what might work and won't work. We'll be bringing options to you, and we're going to have these discussions. So in a lot of ways, what you're doing for us is framing that discussion, getting comfortable with that type of discussion. I am going to, you know, I told you a little bit about that challenge question to sit there and say, you know, what are you doing to attract other young people from other communities to here? The other thing that you've touched upon, and actually you're more sophisticated about it than most communities, and maybe it's because it's just hot on your mind from the presentation that you went to. There is a demographic transition going on, and the next 10 to 20 years are going to be a very interesting time. And part of it is we are aging, but we're also getting younger at the same time. So it's a very interesting dynamic demographically that's happening in this country. It's been described to us as planners, the next 10 years and that what you're going to see is people in leadership positions that have reached those in that point in their lives where they believe they know the right way to live, and that's how they're going to lead, is their communities towards the way they believe is the right way to live. At the same time, there's going to be a transition going on as we get younger to that point of what you all were talking about, of younger citizens that aren't necessarily seeing life the same way. And so it's going to be a dynamic that this plan's got to be ready to address. How do you keep Blue Springs positioned in that transition, that this is a community of choice as that transition is occurring? So be thinking about some of those things, because you're going to hear about it in the conversations with us in particular. I know with Chris and Kevin, and you had Kevin do that presentation, it's a very important point right now, and the communities in the long run are the ones that are going to at least set into motion the frameworks to deal with the city getting younger as it's getting older. So be thinking about that. That's all I've got for now. I think you have enough to go forward with. I heard about the UDC being simplified and easy process. So with that, am I turning it back over to you, Scott, or?
Sure. Just to transition back to Chairman to close things out, but as I noted at the beginning of the meeting, next steering committee meeting will be at 5:30, April 8th. So before that first planning commission meeting in April, we'll have the smaller group
And
kind of around the table, but everybody will be certainly is always invited to attend.
If there any of the steering committee who's not going to be able to make it, please let us know.
Yes.
So that we can make sure the alternate is there.
Correct. And we'll get that information out in terms of who's, kind of the final roster list as well. And we'll kind of send it out just with email addresses on it. If folks want to add their phone numbers for whatever reasons, we can do that. And then be thinking about, too, I mentioned this at the beginning, Chris, before you were here, the binders. We had mentioned that you had offered binders at one point, but we're just kind of play it by ear, but if folks, say, hey, I need a binder just to kind of keep myself organized with paper, I don't want to do everything on the computer yet, just let us know. Again, we can give them out to everybody, or we can just kind of piecemeal it as well. Cost savings, but also paper savings and time savings, so. I think as we go along, maybe it might dictate whether people need additional paper. If we have, 50 different pieces of draft material to look at, people may want a binder for that.
Yeah, we often.
We'll have to have you come up to the mic. Sorry, Chris. We're still being televised, so.
We often go into these projects not knowing how much information you guys will be able to digest or how much we'll produce, but as we begin to layer, whether it's the demographics and data research that we're starting to undertake, an existing conditions report, things like that, I know you can sometimes accumulate a lot of different things, so we found it helpful to give people binders that choose to do that, but we're also going to have a really strong online presence, both publicly and probably within the tighter circle of this group that's not public information as far as reports for that audience, but certainly available to everyone. But if you prefer an online way, we'll be more than ready to meet that as well. And just like Scott said, we can play it by ear, and if you call up and say, I need a binder, we can have one for you ready in a day or two. So just think about how you like to work and how you like to collect your information, I guess.
Thank you. That's all we had from staff. Thank you again, Chris and Dave, for presenting, and I'll kind of turn it back to Chairman Billups.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dave. Got a lot more information there, I think, than what we planned at first. I hope we helped you out. Is there any other announcements or any other business that you want to bring up?
April 8th will be the next meeting. We do have quite a few agenda items actually for this next Planning Commission meeting, so the regular meeting in 2 weeks. On the 25th will actually be, I think it's quite full. We have a couple things, I think. Certainly April 8th as well. We actually have quite a few things already coming in. The application deadline is this Friday, but we've already had a few things come in for April 8th. So if you've been reading your plan notes, new design, thanks to Sarah out in the audience and to Karen for putting those together. The new design, hopefully it's a little bit more kind of compartmentalized so folks can kind of pull out information that's more pertinent to their interest immediately. But hopefully you've been tracking some of those projects. Those things are coming up in the next 2 or 3 Planning Commission meetings. So there'll be quite a bit to do over the next few meetings aside from the steering committee. And then if you look at that kind of agenda or timeline, I should say, it's kind of schedule overview attached in your packet. Really breaks down pretty simply all the different kind of benchmarks, milestones over the next few months. The first week of May, it's kind of we're looking at our first big kind of public event. So that'll be the first thing we'll be kind of pushing out for public interaction involvement. We'll be doing a lot of things, as you know, along the way in terms of steering committee and stuff on the side, but again, that's just a couple 7-8 weeks away.
Okay, thank you. Anybody up here need to add any comments or make an announcement? Remind everybody once again, next Monday, the 18th, is the 3rd annual chili lunch to benefit downtown. Encourage everybody to come down. Have a good time, get good food. Any other?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
I was wondering how long you're going to hang there.